episode of Fishing Planet. Today, for a little background noise, we'll be listening to one of the fan fictions I've created, Tales of New Plutonia, which is an Imaginos fan fiction, as we enjoy our little attempt at catching a few fish.
Desdenova, once a victim of the giant alien oyster boys, had been rescued by her male aspect, Imaginos, who came to their hidden breeding hall with a small army. Imaginos didn't really need an army in his opinion, but when he saw the many babies surrounding Desdenova, most of whom were human oysterkin hybrids, he was very glad that he had brought a few extra people with him. He would never have been able to carry that many infants and rescue Desdenova. "Are we taking these things?" one soldier asked, uncertainly.
"These things, as you call them, are my babies, so yes, we are bringing them. Even if I do detest their fathers, they are innocent in this. I won't abandon them. I certainly have no intention of letting their fathers raise them and teach them such crude behavior as they apparently grew up being taught."
"There is a small uninhabited island in the Mediterranean Sea," Imaginos said. "I saw it once during my early voyages on the Plutonia. We could build a settlement for you and the children there. The climate is warm and welcoming, and there are enough resources to build homes and start a few gardens. Do you think you could survive on a pescatarian diet? I didn't see any cows or chickens there. There were some sheep, but you might want to reserve those for their wool." "We might, indeed," Desdenova agreed. "Yes, I think we could survive on a pescatarian diet. Any birds that we might get eggs from?"
"Most of the birds are too small to lay eggs of any useful size for eating. You'd have to eat 3 or 4 for any sustenance, and that would jeopardize the species. The 2 largest species on the island are the star vultures and vulture cats. But vulture cats have live births, and the star vultures lay their eggs on Saturn's rings and only come here during certain months. So you won't get eggs from them."
"Vulture cats? Star vultures?" Desdenova raised an eyebrow. "Children of your Bizardo form, I assume?"
"Indeed," Imaginos admitted, a touch of pride in his voice. "The vulture cats almost became extinct, so I bring a few mating pairs back from the 23rd century when only 100 remained and introduced them to the island where they could breed and flourish. They've had to adapt their diets, but they've become excellent at catching fish, though at first they weren't too fond of the prospect." He smiled conspiratorially. "Their bodies are mostly feline, you see, so hunting for them is like dunking cats."
Chapter 1. Zaranova sat cross-legged on the shores of Plutonia, the hem of her short toga damp with the water that lapped at her body as the waves swept rhythmically around her tall, semi-alien form. A daughter of Desdenova and Nazar, Zaranova had long silver hair and pearlescent eyes. She had a swimmer's body, which was no surprise since she loved the water, and would often come to the beach to meditate in the waves or skinny dip at dawn before her sisters and brethren awoke. Desdenova knew fully well what her daughter was doing, but as she did it alone, and Plutonia was uninhabited except for Desdenova, her offspring, and the 2 vulturin species that lived there, she simply warned her to watch for ships, and the time, and keep her clothing nearby. When Zaranova asked how to keep the time, Desdenova put a tall piece of driftwood in the sand and showed her how to tell time with the shadows.
This morning, the water was comfortably cool and it tickled her legs as it washed over them. In the nearby skies, a vulture cat flew in lowering circles, preparing to dive into the ocean for a fish.
"Good luck," she whispered, watching serenely as the creature swooped down, vanishing beneath the water and coming back up moments later with a wriggling fish in its beaked jaws. "Well done." The vulture cat landed several feet inland, set the fish down just long enough to shake the water from its fur and feathers, and then began to feed upon its catch. "Zaranova," Desdenova called from the edge of the woods. "Breakfast will be ready soon." She stood up at the sound of her mother's voice. "Coming," she called back as she walked across the sands and towards the woods that separated the beach from the settlement that Imaginos and Desdenova had established 20 years earlier for Desdenova and her babies. a settlement which had thrived since its inception. Chapter 2. At the same time that Zaranova was meditating, her half-brother Desio was mending his fishing net as he sat on the back porch of one of the many huts that were used to shelter the hundreds of offspring that Desdenova had borne. Each hut housed 5 of Desdenova's descendants. They had grown up in them, raised by nannies who assisted Desdenova. Desdenova acted as a teacher, passing her wisdom and morals to her children, whom she decidedly did not want to be like their alien fathers. Desio, a son of Alioth, was a fisherman by trade. Having learned the skill from Emeginos' crew when they came for their 2-week visits each year. He wished that they would stay longer, but Desdenova was adamant that no men from the outside be permitted to stay more than 2 weeks at a time, and only once a year. She never said why, but Desio suspected that she didn't trust outsiders. Weaving the gap in the net closed with skillful fingers, Desio finished the net and set it in his boat, prepared to take it out for his daily catch. Or at least, what he hoped would be a catch. Fishing, after all, is not a guarantee, and there were days when the nets would come up empty.
His half-brothers and brothers would join him, 3 to a boat, singing fishing shanties as they cast and drew their nets. Alinova and Megrod always joined him on his boat, their camaraderie evident as they drawled and sang. Breakfast, Desdenova called to them, her voice ringing joyfully as it did each morning. Thoughts of fishing and songs were set aside as Desl washed his hands and made his way to the clearing, where many tables made from the stumps of the trees that had been cut down to build the huts were adorned with local customary breakfast of dragon fruit and bananas, both of which grew plentifully and were harvested by his siblings and half-siblings.
After the morning song, a reflective sea shanty taught to them by Desdenova as they had grown up, they began to eat, chatting amongst themselves about their daily plans and arranging groups for any activities that required them. Only the fishermen were a static group, the others leaving themselves open to new experiences. Chapter 3. As the denizens of New Plutonia sat around the tree-carved tables, their wooden spoons in hand, their half-dragon fruits were placed upon their wooden bowls.
At the center of the circle of tables, Desdenova, the only human present, mother and grandmother to the many half-oyster queen who populated the island, raised her goblet to signal the usual morning toast.
Many years ago, the first Austriophanes and I came to this island seeking solace and refuge from the world of man, and the 7 oyster boys who are named for the stars in Ursa Major. We had been rescued by my male counterpart, Imaginos, who like myself is an immortal human, but who unlike myself, him being the original self, and not a mere aspect, is also a shapeshifter. He it was who fathered the star vultures, and who fathered and mothered the vulture cats through his animal aspects, Bizardo and Maggie.
Today we celebrate our peace and freedom, and the day we and the crew of the tall ship Plutonia built our then little community, which has grown into a thriving city of not a couple hundred, but as of last night 703, those last 3 being born to the newly named Virginica, Grasso, and Estrina families during the night. Congratulations to those families. During the past year, I would like to remind you that the 7 original families, Alida, the descendants of Alioth, Alpidine, those who came from Alkid, Dubia, those who came from Dub, Megriana, those whose progenitor was Megras, Meron, the children of Merak, Mizaru, the children of Mizar and Fechlin, the children of Fecta have also been blessed with children and grandchildren. So to all those families, I offer hope for a continued future of peace, well-being, and goodwill.
The group let out a hearty cheer and drank from their wooden goblets before they began to eat their dragon fruit, and the bananas that had been passed around quietly during the speech. As they talked, the new fathers talked about their wives and babies. 2 of the newborns, as it turned out, were boys and 1 a girl.
The Virginica family was an offshoot of the Dubias, and the youngest adult female of the family had given birth to a healthy baby boy named Alko, who, like like his paternal ancestors, had beaks like a geoduck and a soft oyster shell on his back, which would harden with age, as well as 5 eyes, 2 to a side and 1 in the center of his forehead, which resembled a coral plant. The Crusoes were the grandchildren of Megrus and also had a son who was named Winneck, though his biology was slightly more human in that he had no shell on his back and only 2 eyes, though the barnacles on his joints and geoduck bits clearly marked him as oysterkin.
The girl was the child of the Ostrina family. Her name, which her family had asked Desdenova permission for, was Imaginova, a portmanteau of Imaginos and Desdenova. Due to recessive genes, she looked almost entirely human, save for the barnacles where her nipples should have been and the conch shells that replaced her ears. The shells were soft, but, like the shell on Alcor's back, they would harden with time and age.
When the mealtime was over, the 3 new fathers each took a dragon fruit and banana back to their homes for their wives, who had remained in their huts recovering from childbirth and nursing their newborns, while the others grouped up to begin their daily tasks, the fishermen already beginning their sea shanties even before they reached their boats, while the gardeners discussed plant care and the farmers and shopkeepers discussed how the sales of their produce was coming along and when new stock would be needed.
Chapter 4. It was the day of the annual visit from Imagenos, a day which would be followed by a week where the people of New Plutonia would celebrate with fruits and candies brought from the faraway land of New Hampshire. Long ago, when the original settlers had come to New Plutonia, salted meats had been brought in the form of jerky and beef sticks. But Imaginos knew that the current residents had neither the desire nor stomach for land meat, as they called it, so he stuck to fruits, vegetables, and sweets, the last of which included pretzels, chocolates, and bonbons of various types, from lollies to chocolate kisses.
The children were dragged down to the shore every year shouting Imaginos, Imaginos, as the sails of the tall charm ship Plutonia came into view, their eyes sparkling with joy at the prospect of new treats and learning new games from the mainland.
But this year, it was a different ship that approached the island. A ship displaying a banner unfamiliar to most of the people on the island.
The children fell silent around their parents as they watched a man carrying a small wooden crate step into a landing craft with an oarsman who rowed him to the shore.
Desdenova met the man knee-deep in the water, fearing what the box might hold. "He kept your secret," the man said, his voice solemn and respectful, as he held out the box to her. She didn't take the box, but instead lifted the top as the man held it out to her. At the sight of its contents, she went white as a sheet and turned to the families on the shore. "Take your children home," she said, her voice stern and unwavering. "There will be no celebration this year." She watched as the stunned families led their children away from the beach, not turning until the last ones disappeared into the trees. "Who did this?" she demanded angrily.
"Those who sought to recapture you," the messenger replied as he followed her with this burden. "He refused to tell them where you were. They tortured him for weeks. Then, finally, he looked into the box."
"We must give what we have a proper burial," Desdenova said as they reached the beach. She led him 3 feet from the water to a small dune. "This will be Imaginos' resting place. Help me dig."
After nearly an hour, they stopped. Then Desdenova removed the head of the Imaginus from the box, for that was, indeed, its contents, and placed it in the hole, saying a quick prayer, for she wasn't certain that his executioner, or as she called the man, his murderer, had not.
After she and the messenger had finished burying the remains of Imaginos, Desdenova looked at him. "I cannot bear the sight of you," she told him coldly. "Though it is not your fault, you have borne me the worst news of my life. Be gone from this island and never return."
The messenger nodded and returned to the landing craft and his ship.
Desdenova knelt beside the unmarked grave and wept, unaware that the grave would not remain unmarked for very long. Chapter 5.
As Desdenova got dressed for bed, her mind on the people of her village and how she would break the news of Imaginus's death at the breakfast speech the next day, something unexpected was happening on the small dune in which the head of Imaginus was buried.
From the blood of the head and the tears of Destinova, a black shoot rose up from the burial mound. It continued to grow until it was half a foot tall, its color blacker than midnight, its roots embedded in the buried head from which it grew, though this fact could not be seen.
The next morning, Justinova came to breakfast not in her usual brightly coloured dress, but in a black and silver morning gown bearing an armband the colour of Imaginus's eyes.
Breakfast was served without the usual speech, after which Destinova dismissed the children to their homes, an unusual move for her, as she usually loved to talk with them about many things.
The children looked disappointed as they headed home.
As you know, she said solemnly to the adults who remained, yesterday was the day of our annual celebration. Or rather, it was meant to be. But I sent you home without the customary gifts and meeting with our benefactor Imaginos after receiving a small wooden box. I am holding this speech after breakfast because I bring devastating news. That box contained a severed head of our dear Imaginos.
Gasps echoed around the table as the people of New Plutonia felt their hearts break with dread and grief. What would they tell their children? An annual custom, the visit of the Imaginos, would no longer be a part of their lives. A friend and benefactor was gone forever. Other more pressing thoughts would come in time, but these things were all they could bring themselves to think on. The truth of the matter too horrific to consider properly. The messenger who brought his remains, Justinova continued, told me that he was executed by those who sought to recapture me, to take us all prisoner and sell the children on the market. That he refused to tell them our location. And for that, his life was put to an end. So in his honor, we will still hold a ceremony on the day. But it will be a day of remembrance rather than of celebration.
She downed the drink in her goblet, then headed to the beach to tend to the day-old grave. When she got there, she saw the shoot growing out of the mound, and her knees buckled with amazement. As she hit the ground, she saw the shoot more closely. A few branches had started to form. The forks where they sprouted from bearing clusters of tiny green and silver buds, the colors of Imaginos' eyes and hair. What miracle is this? She asked herself. What marvel comes from the blood of Imaginos? She felt a bitter sweetness in her heart as she got to her feet.
This tree is sacred, she declared, for she could tell that a tree was indeed what it would become. None shall cut it or climb it. The wise may read in its shade when it reaches maturity. If branches are felled by wind and rain, they may be used as kindling of firewood, but only then.
Having said this, she returned to the village bearing news of the unexpected shoot. Chapter 6. 7 years passed on the island of New Plutonia. The annual day of celebration had been replaced with an annual day of remembrance. The people came to the beach and sang a song to honor Imaginos' spirit.
During the 2 months prior to the day of remembrance, the children would carve a small wooden ship together resembling the charmed ship Plutonia, which had a box built into the deck. In this box, the children of New Plutonia would place small carved trinkets and handwritten messages. Then, at sunset, Justinova would place the mini Plutonia in the ocean and send it off. This year, as the crowd approached the beach, they saw something they didn't expect. On the tree of blood, a single fruit had grown. It was high up, out of reach. And since Justinova had long ago forbidden anyone to climb the tree, it would not be eaten by herself nor any of her children or children's children.
This fruit is a thing of beauty, not to be touched or spoiled by human hands, she said. And indeed it was beautiful, bearing the soft pink and green spines of a dragon fruit, but the colors and spots of a white strawberry. It belongs to the star vultures and vulture cats, if to any living thing at all. Let nature partake of nature, as it is meant to do. That is what Imaginos would have wanted. But it was not nature that partook of the tree's first fruit. That night, as the citizens ate their evening meal and discussed what messages the children had sent off upon the tides of fate, the man who had executed Imaginos had finally found where Destinova was living.
Having sailed for 6 weeks, living only on salted meats and fish, he hungered for a bit of fruit, missing the sweet taste of berries, the mild sourness of oranges, and the gentle flavour of bananas. So it was that when he saw the single curious fruit of the tree of blood that he craved it more than any fruit that had ever passed his lips. Without a second thought, for what fruit so beautiful could possibly be poisonous, he climbed the tree and plucked it triumphantly. He didn't even begin to climb down as he bit into it, expecting sweetness due to its similarity to a strawberry.
It was far from sweet. It was far from bitter. It was fire. As soon as it was swallowed, he could feel the sense of great burning in his stomach. Not the burning of spicy foods, but a terrible sensation, like he had swallowed the fires of hell. He lost his grip on the branch.
Mercifully, he was mere ashes by the time his body was halfway to the ground.
Chapter 7.
As the children went to play on the beach the next morning, one of them, a girl named Charisma, noticed that the sacred fruit was missing. She didn't see any ashes, for the wind had blown them away as they had fallen the previous night.
Unhappy that someone had stolen the fruit, Charisma ran back through the trees to the village square, shouting, "It's gone! It's gone!" One of the fishermen who was folding his net set the half-folded net aside and stood up. Grasping Charisma by her shoulders, he spoke, "Calm down, child. What's gone?" Charisma looked at him. "The sacred fruit," she told him. "Someone has taken the fruit."
The fisherman looked at his colleague. "Go tell Desdenova."
The other fisherman hurried off. "Did you see anything besides the fact that the fruit was missing?" Charisma shook her head. Desdenova, infuriated by the news, stormed to the beach with all the ferocity of a wild boar. She didn't want to believe that anyone from her descendants would take it. They knew that it was sacred to her, to all of them. That stealing it for any reason was tantamount to heresy in her eyes.
Nevertheless, it was gone, taken by someone, and she would find out who. Marching onto the beach, she studied the tree. Then, she saw it. Lodged in the middle branches of the tree, with a bite taken out of it, was the sacred fruit. She did not climb the tree to retrieve it. Instead, she returned to her hut and retrieved a long-handled broom. Then, she carefully dislodged the profane fruit and examined it.
The bite mark was too small to have come from any of her descendants, and she herself had not eaten it. So, who?
Then she saw it, a few miles off the coast with sails still visible. She wondered why the children hadn't noticed it, then realized that they had been too upset about the fruit to see anything beyond it.
With a heart filled with fury, she ran back to the village square, meeting the fishermen as they headed for the beach.
"There's a ship on the horizon," she told them. "I need you to take me to it. Whatever landing craft brought the intruder to shore has been taken by the tide."
"We will bring you, Queen Desdenova," the younger of the two fishermen agreed. They reached the shore and each team put their boat into the water. The older of the two on the team, who had agreed to ferry Desdenova to the ship on the horizon, helped her into their boat, followed by his younger colleague. Then they were on their way to the thief's ship.
Reaching the ship, the younger fisherman boarded first, checking to see if anyone else was on board. After several minutes, he returned to the main deck.
"All clear," he announced. "No signs of a crew. Whoever came here was acting on their own." Desdenova boarded the ship next, looking around for any clue as to what the thief's motive was for coming to New Plutonia in the first place. It wasn't for the fruit, she knew. No one outside the island even knew it or the tree existed. In time, she found the journal. "I have found her at last, the one called Desdenova. It has taken me 7 years since the execution of Imaginos. I would have found her sooner, except the messenger I sent with his head was either unable to deliver it or has betrayed me. It matters not, however. Tonight, her head will be my trophy."
Desdenova shivered as she closed the journal.
"Take me back to the beach," she said. "I need to examine the dune around the sacred tree." A short time later, She was doing just that, and to her bewilderment, she saw that there were some indications of a path from the shore to the dune, but none going back. Then, she looked more closely at the fruit. There, where the bite mark was a line of ashes. "So, Imaginos," she whispered, "it seems you have had your revenge."
And so ends the story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're enjoying the fishing. I did manage to finally catch the pickerel, so now I'm down to the last two fish that I need, the buffalo and the catfish. So we'll see if we can catch those. Something. Like coffee. Good. Okay. And let's see. Little cheese, maybe catch catfish, or maybe not, we'll see. What have we got? Bluegill. I love this game. Fishing is a nice way to relax, whether it's on the video game or in real life. In the great blue room, as some people call it. Something. Actually, let's turn around and try the other side near the lily pads and whatnot. Let's see, it's over here. See if I catch catfish over here. Can you put anything? Let's see. Broadcast. What have we got? Good fish. Another pickerel. Got the branch. Ooh, good fish. What we got here? This one is spotted bass. Right. See. See what happens if we wheel it back in a medium speed with coil, or rapidly coil. If it's too fast. So let's do that. Try straight recoil. Or straight re-spin, so straight slow. got? Crappie. Trophy bluegill. Last cast of the day, I think. We'll see what happens. Didn't catch all the fish I was hoping, the types of fish I was hoping to catch today, but I did get the pickerel, so I'm happy with that. It would be nice to get the buffalo and the cat, but it wasn't meant to be today, I guess. I think that's going to be it. So it was good fishing with you all today, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of the day, and I'll see you next time.